It's sure been an interesting week if you're into retro-styled sim racing games. It was 1 week ago, last Wednesday, that Grand Prix circuit was finally announced. This wonderful retro-inspired sim of 1980s Formula One or Grand Prix racing. Something that has been in the works since I think 2021, all developed by a single person, Marcell. And I've been following them on Twitter for a number of years. I think I caught on to it a couple of years ago at least. And they hadn't posted in a little while, but finally last week they posted this announcement trailer. And I think it went a bit further than even Marcell was planning, something like 80,000 views already. And it's up on Steam, the release date is TBD. But it looks absolutely wonderful. A game made with a lot of passion and is absolutely an homage to those Grand Prix games of the 1990s and early 2000s. And so to my surprise, opening my inbox today and getting an email from Microprose PR, Geoff Crammond series announced by Microprose. I almost had to do a double take, but it said Microprose and Geoff Crammond reunite to revive a racing legend. So out of nowhere, I think pretty much for everybody this time, Microprose, the publisher of the original Geoff Crammond Grand Prix games, has announced a re-release of sorts for the full series of Grand Prix games from Geoff Crammond. This is Formula One Grand Prix, or World Circuit as some markets knew it. And then of course Grand Prix 2, Grand Prix 3, and then Grand Prix 4. But they've all been rebranded now as Geoff Crammond Racing, which is in itself kind of interesting. I didn't know Grand Prix was a trademark term, but perhaps with Formula One licensing and things, they've changed the name to be Geoff Crammond Racing. So they're going to be re-releasing these games on Steam and most likely be coupling them together with some ways to make them easier for everybody to run, which I think could be great because they certainly haven't been easy to run for quite some time. So this announcement popped up and instantly a lot of folks have been very excited for this, myself included, because we've already had a resurgence for some of these games over the past couple of years, especially Grand Prix 2 with x86 Grand Prix 2 from Hatcher. And so when I went to the Grand Prix 2 page and started looking through the different screenshots and things and the information that they've included about this, I was actually pretty surprised to see that this screenshot is absolutely from the x86 version of Grand Prix 2 with the wheels, the additional widescreen obviously, but then the 3D rendered wheels on the player car. And I started looking through some of the different screenshots and noticed that they're all very different. Some of them this is a very low resolution screenshot of probably a VGA version. That's the x86 screenshot. Some of them are definitely from the original DOS version of the game and others are from x86. But there seems to be somewhat of a mixed bag of some of the different media that's included. And jumping over to Grand Prix 4 is where I started to get a little worried with what I was looking at. Now, it should come as no surprise, especially with the rename, that they'd have to go through and probably censor or remove licensed content, or at least the names and the logos and stuff themselves from the games. They actually go as far as including that the games will have Steam Workshop support, so we'll be able to customize the games with new teams, drivers, and track names so that we can essentially probably rename everything back to how it originally would be. So no issues there, but looking at some of the screenshots and things that they've included, I noticed, especially this picture of the Ferrari, that they've not only airbrushed off or removed the default logos that are on this car in the game. I think it's really just the shell logo. But then they've also put on a bunch of other logos, some of which are real logos with different names, or some other oddities like the Oracle logo behind the driver that says Oracle, but then on the lower part of the side pod that says Arache. And this instantly to me looks like AI edited imagery. If we look at another shot of the Ferrari going through Imola here, you can see on the side pod that it says Lucci or something like that. Completely different logos. There's something even weirder on the back of the engine cowl. So then I got curious and did a little bit of Googling and found that these screenshots that they're including, especially the ones for Grand Prix 4, are some of the first results that you get if you Google Grand Prix 4. We can see it again on the Jordan where it says Lenovo on the back of it, but then on the front of the nose says Lenovar. It's just a little bit bizarre. If you look at some of the features as well going into the text section of it, for Grand Prix 4, they're promising a comprehensive career mode where we manage a team, develop our car. They're also saying that we could compete against AI opponents or challenge friends in multiplayer mode. These are both features, the career mode and the multiplayer, that are not a part of the original Grand Prix 4. I guess you could play Grand Prix 4 over LAN, but it never, to my knowledge, never really worked very well. These are very much single-player games. And so not only is Microprose promising to release all 4 Grand Prix games, but they're also going to update them to work on modern computers and potentially include some new features. The whole announcement almost feels like a reaction to Grand Prix Circuit, and very much just looks like something that was thrown together extremely quickly using some AI, not only to doctor some images and clean up some logos, but also potentially generate the text content itself. Now, Microprose isn't really the same studio that it was back in the 90s. It's been purchased and transferred ownership several times since then. But it seems like more of late they've been doing this thing where they've been re-releasing games from their back catalog and maybe even sprucing them up a bit. I think the main example of this, or the one I'm aware of, is the B-17 Flying Fortress game, the Mighty Eighth game that I think has released in early access and currently has mixed reviews on Steam. Something I haven't played, but from what I've seen and read, was initially received pretty well and hasn't really kept up with people's expectations since then. And so I think the promise here is quite great and is really something that I think would be excellent for these types of games. There absolutely is a barrier to entry to getting into any of these old racing games, and so anything that could be done to make them more widely available and easier to use is just going to help them continue to live on. But I have to say that I'm a bit nervous and skeptical in how this release has been announced. It seems like it's very, very early and without too much thought behind it, at least in how it's presented. And in my mind, just feels way too coincidental to not come right off the heels of Grand Prix Circuit being announced. The announcement seeming that it's a bit rushed and not very well put together might just be the announcement part itself, though. In regards to x86 GP2 being featured in some of the screenshots for the GP2, or Geoff Crammond Racing 2 game that they're putting out, Hatcher did say that he gave them his permission to do this a little while ago. So there's been something in the works, but I think what we're seeing on Steam is not necessarily what we're going to end up getting. I'm also happy that they asked Hatcher about the x86 version, since it indicates that they might be willing to work with the community a little bit and try to enhance it for everybody. I guess the concern is with something like this is that the publisher comes in and reclaims the rights to the original software and then maybe tries to shut everything else down that's happening. I suppose that could always happen too. But I'll very much hope not. I think one of the reasons why these games have such longevity and why they're so well regarded today is the detail and care that was put into making the originals. You know, they weren't always perfect. Grand Prix 4 had a pretty shaky launch, but it's clear that Crammmond cared deeply for these games. And I think that's what has a lot of folks really excited about Grand Prix Circuit and the amount of effort that Marcell has put into that game, because that looks like an absolute passion project, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. So I hope whatever Microprose is releasing here can live up to the original, and with Geoff Crammond's name on it, I do hope this is the case, more of just a shaky launch or something hastily put together to get it on Steam, and that the final product will be worthy of the originals. So this is just a quick video to talk about these two announcements, since it seems like a crazy coincidence that they're both happening around the same time. I wasn't originally going to make a video yet about Grand Prix Circuit because I just don't have anything to share other than what Marcell's announced already, and probably what you've seen in some other videos and things. But as soon as I have something else to share for that, I'll definitely be diving in, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it, try it out, and see what that's all about, because it looks like it's going to be an absolutely awesome time. So we'll cross our fingers that the Grand Prix series re-releasing is a good thing, and with the release of Grand Prix Circuit, that it's just a sign in general that people are coming around to these kind of single-player racing experiences that I know I and a lot of you out there love so much. But I'll keep an eye out for what's to come and hopefully share more in the near future. But until then, this is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.